Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. Nice to be with you all again, and firstly, of course, Happy New Year to you and yours. We've been away since Christmas and New Year, just as well actually, because I think everyone in the Prism team, except John Ortecki, who's taken ill tonight, has been ill over the Christmas New Year period with COVIDs and viruses and flus and coughs. We probably wouldn't have been able to put a show on even if we'd wanted to. But we're back. There's lots to talk about, lots and lots to talk about. And I hope we can get through most of it today. And we'll be bringing back our midweek shows as well, because there's a lot going on in the big world that we need to talk about as well. But let's get the gang in right away. He's back in the Côte de Brig. There's Phil.
Hey, how yous all doing? Great to be back amongst my own folk. Aye, fish supper, square sausage, fry up, chips and curry sauce, pretty much the full shebang. So it's been great. It's good about it. Even my mum to Balmaha, which was a cracking wee drive. It was smashing. And then to Edinburgh yesterday, meet some old colleagues and mates from work and some good buddies. And I'll be out later on up my mate's hut in a garden shed in Airdrie, which is where we hang out and drink beer and watch football. Smashing. Listening to good music.
That sounds like fun. I wish I was there myself. Right, and there, up there in Clackmannanshire, everyone's favourite lawyer, it's Eva.
Hello,
Eva.
Roddy.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm glad you're feeling better, and I certainly hope for the sake of the world as well as ourselves personally that we see a better end to 2024 than the start has been, because so far it's been absolutely pitiful.
Oh, it's wild, isn't it? We've got lots to talk about tonight, lots and lots. And let's do it, but let's bring in the rest, and not forgetting our weatherman, our exclusive weatherman over there in Edinburgh. Sir Lloyd, Mr. Quinnan, how are you? Oh, muted. You owe me a pound.
I'm fine. I hope everybody had a good New Year.
Indeed. Great. And down there in the borders, we mustn't forget our Yvonne. All glammed up tonight, I've got to tell you folks. Look at it, all glammed up. Hey Yvonne, how you doing?
I've washed my hair and put on some lip gloss. So, but yeah, I'm fine. Just concerned about the world we're living in.
Tell me about it. We all are. So, Happy New Year to all our viewers, as I've said right at the beginning. But I want, just before we start, there's lots to, I want to start with one main topic. Techie, could you line up the video there with our Eva and Dr. Lynn Connolly, who's most of you, probably a lot of you who are watching this show will know, she's walking to Edinburgh to get a meeting with Emma Ruddock, which has not been forthcoming. But our Eva spoke to her on the first day of her journey down to Edinburgh. Can you stick that up, Techie?
Real pleasure to be here today in Arbroath, meeting Lynn Tanny Connolly, who's been on the long walk for justice today. She's just completed the first leg. Can I say, Lynn, it's especially heartening for me to see you here in Arbroath, because you're fighting not for glory, nor honour, nor riches, but for the apology for the Tinker experiment. So please tell your audience what it is you're doing and why you've been drawn to this.
Well, it's just as you said there, Eva, it's about justice, and I have tried every way that I can to get to meet with representatives from the current Scottish Government. I've tried everything else. The Minister for Equalities, Emma Ruddock, is just stonewalling me. She insists that she's offered to meet with me. I know that she hasn't had the evidence to prove that. And I feel the only way that I'm going to get to meet this woman face to face is for me to walk on Parliament. And when I get there, I'll stand outside Parliament and I'll stand there until she comes out and meets me and hears why I need an apology.
Please, everybody, do all you can to support Lynn in her long walk for justice. She will reach Holyrood in Edinburgh, and I hope that as many of you as possible will see her on her way there and meet her when she is there. Thank you.
Fantastic woman, Eva, and she's not in the best of health in this walk she's doing in this terrible cold weather.
She's had a couple of hospital appointments this week, but she's some courage, She's absolutely determined to make it to Holyrood, and I certainly hope that she does. I believe that she will. I also believe that it is completely unnecessary and quite shameful that she's been driven to do this, because what she's looking for is an apology in relation to the Tinker experiments that she detailed in an earlier episode of Prism. Some of Lynn's relatives were removed from home as children and trafficked abroad. They were trafficked to Canada. This is part of a much bigger experiment involving probably thousands of children from Tinker or Gypsy traveller families who were removed and sent to the likes of Canada and Australia. And in many cases, although they were adopted, there were very many others who were treated as no better than slave labour. Some of them met very sticky, unfortunate, painful ends too. And it's a most shameful episode in Scottish history that needs to be addressed quickly and appropriately by the Scottish Government. They've been talking for a long time about doing research into the potential for an apology, but they're going about it all the wrong way and taking far too long. For the life of me, I cannot understand why the Scottish Parliament can agree to pardon witches from centuries ago and kind of get the finger out and deal with the people that are today living as victims of, as I said, a most shameful episode in Scottish history. Emma Roddick has agreed to meet Lynn, but not to discuss the agenda that Lynn actually wants to discuss. And I think that needs to be addressed without delay. And that meeting could take place this week, and Lynn could get the apology that she and so many others so desperately deserve.
Here. I just should say to our viewers, we did invite, although she has been blocked, although I've never had a conversation with a woman, Roddick, we got word to her to invite her to come to Prism and to put her side across and to talk to us. She declined, or she at least ignored us, just the same way as she's ignoring Dr. Connolly. But we won't, and we're going to have Lynn in soon, because as you know, we did have the programme, and if you're looking for it, just go into the barheadboy.com site and look up The Great Travesty. It's the podcast that I did with Lynn, and it talks about the Tinker experiment. And we'll have her back in to talk about her trip to Canada and about how she gets on in this journey. So, moving on. Lloyd, it's hard to believe that in 2024, this September, it'll have been 10 years, a decade, a full decade since our independence referendum. Where are we now? Are we further forward? Are we staying in the same place? What's going on? What do you think?
I think we're further away than we were on the morning of the 18th of September 2014. And that's an indictment of the political class. But I think we also need to remember that not only is this year is the 10th anniversary of the independence referendum, it's the 25th anniversary of the inauguration of the Scottish Parliament. And here we are 25 years later. We've got less money to spend on what the things our people need. We've shifted no further forward in realising our democratic aspirations. And unfortunately, we seem to be caught up in an ideological mess, which has been created effectively by the failed leadership of Nicola Sturgeon, who has left us with a government who appears not to know which way to travel. Much talk of the word independence, but no route map of any kind whatsoever. So 25 years of a parliament, 10 years since a referendum, and our people are in a worse situation now than they were either in 1999 or in September the 18th, 2014.
Quite heartbreaking. Yvonne, you come up to Scotland in 2011, I believe. And here we are, 2024, 10 years after the referendum. Do you feel we've moved forward, stood still, gone backwards?
Well, I've moved forward by coming to live in Scotland. And so that's one regret that I don't have. But the aspirations that I had of Scottish independence, I look back now and I cannot see the signs. You know, we were all so, even after we lost the damn thing, the next day, everybody was still upbeat apart from the unionists. And then it all unravelled when David Cameron made his speech in Downing Street at the crack of dawn to basically basically start talking about English laws for English people. And try as I might, I cannot look back and see one particular day where it snapped, where it suddenly went awry.
I can tell you if you like. November 2014, when Nicola Sturgeon became the leader of the SNP, that's when it went awry.
Yeah, but that's, you know, you've got the benefit of hindsight there, Rod.
Oh, absolutely, that's what we're talking about now.
Well, we didn't have a crystal ball back then, but, you know, I just think that Nicola Sturgeon has such a lot to answer for. And she's lost some of her swagger, but, you know, there's still no real humility there. There's no sort of asking the public to forgive her. In fact, you know, the attitude that Blair had over Iraq, she has the same attitude over the referendum and over independence. And every time I see that collage of national front pages, it just gets me more and more angry. And the Nationals are bloody rag as well. So
we'll come on to that later.
I'm looking back in anger. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but glad I came to Scotland.
Yeah, we're glad you came as well. Phil, you were heavily involved in the Yes campaign. How do you feel after almost 10 years?
Betrayed. Very simple. As simple as that. The SNP have won 8 elections in Scotland since the independence referendum of 2014. The Westminster ones of 2015, 2017 and 2019. Holyrood elections in 2016 and 21, and the council elections of 17 and 22. Then the European election of 2019. And none of these were like close run, you know. It was a 23-point win over the nearest rival in the Euro election. And only the 2017 council elections saw a winning margin in single digits. So there's been a and I mean, this is a big plus that we must not lose sight of. There's been a pro-independence majority in the Scottish Parliament for every single day since the 2014 referendum. Were Scotland a normal democratic country, and I'm paraphrasing the Reverend here, we'd be out of the UK now. We've been saying this for a long time. Our Parliament would just voted for it, just like the UK Parliament did for Brexit, and that would have been it. The UK Parliament didn't require or seek permission from the European Parliament to leave the EU. It simply exercised its democratic right. And that's what we need to keep focused on. You know, the bodies that represent our people have that power, or should or will have that power. We can make it have that power. And we need to remember the power that we have in controlling these shysters, and that's the problem. Why hasn't the SNP under Nicola and our shyster ilk, Humza et al., gained us our freedom? Why are they not seriously pursuing it and instead chase nonsense issues like not allowing Scotland to be taken out of the EU against its will? Aye, right. I mean, Joanna Cherry's got a lot to answer for that piece of clever, though futile and self-serving. I felt it was self-serving. It was certainly an egotistical jaunt, a legal play that did nothing to benefit the cause for independence. Why do it then? Is it just to go on the telly? To be the big I am? Not good enough, folks. And nonetheless, it will come. We remain in the majority, and that's what we've got to remember. Scots want and shall have our independence. The problem is we now have yet another obstacle, the SNP in its current form. Know thine enemy, friends. Know thine enemy.
Yeah. Eva, what about yourself? 10 years nearly. Are you feeling enthusiastic or depressed?
As usual, a mix of both. But I think it's important to record that 2 things have happened in the last 10 years that are really important. One is that support for independence has increased. And the other is our country's desperate need to be independent has rocketed, in part because of Brexit, in part because of Tory austerity, and just the general dreadful state that the United Kingdom is in, both in terms of domestic policy and international policy. But what we must not lose sight of is what the others have said. Support for independence is far higher than the support for one political party. And no one political party has the right to demand that people vote only for them to achieve independence. We know within the movement that there are whispers of campaigns that are now getting underway by spirited individuals who have some insight and courage and determination to move mountains that the politicians at the moment seem signally incapable of doing. So, yep, it's been depressing. I hate the fact that we remain part of this corrupt union, but I'm also optimistic that there are good people, not necessarily aligned to individual political parties, who seem pretty determined, from what I've heard this year so far, to get together and start to make things happen. It won't be a rebirth of the old Yes movement. That was a dress rehearsal in 2014. It's going to be the real McCoy this year. The people will speak before the 10th anniversary of that referendum, and it'll be a loud, resounding cheer for self-determination for our country. And that's what our country needs, is to hear the voice of the people, and the politicians need to listen to the people, not the other way about.
Yeah. Lloyd, there was an article in the paper this week in the National. They gave a column to AIM, the Aberdeen Independence Movement, who were berating the Yes movement, not the SNP. They were berating the Yes movement for 9 years of inaction. And they were saying, let's make the Yes movement get serious, as if it wasn't the SNP and people at AIM who wanted you to, unless you believe in their gender ideology, you're not allowed to campaign apparently for independence. But they're trying to shift the blame onto the Yes movement.
It's an absurdity. It's just absurd, Roddy. I mean, I've followed the intellectual meanderings of the AIM group for a few years now. Most of them were at primary school when the referendum happened in 2014. Let's be honest about this. Some of the rest of them were members of the Labour Party. Some of them were members of the Green Party. Some of them were just folk they found in the street. I think we really need to move away from even being in the least interested in what this small number of people with an agenda which is the protection of the SNP and the protection of their own perceived futures on the gravy train that is the SNP, and that we should consign them to the bin of history. We need to take no lessons. Those of us who were active, as we all were in 2014, need to take no lessons from the children of Aberdeen, who cannot even have a decent relationship with Yes Aberdeen, which was actually the campaigning organisation in 2014, long before AIM even existed. So let's just forget them. They're an irrelevance. And the fact that they've got a column in the National proves their irrelevance.
Yeah, here's the fact. But the fact, Yvonne, the National, the so-called paper of independence, gives a platform to these people, quite ridiculous.
Well, these Aberdeen lot, they're all burdened by their own self-importance, and they make the mistake in believing that we are very interested in what they have to say. Well, we're not. You know, the Yes movement in Scotland is a great and noble movement. The fact that it's thriving in numbers isn't a testament to their work. It's a testament to the hard work of everyone who dreams one day of getting independence. And for the National to give these spotty little oiks all this oxygen of publicity is, it just shows how sad the National has become. I mean, it's not been around long enough to have a great history anyway. But you know, when you look at the ABC figures, which I did over the weekend, they've got about 500 subscriptions. That's 500 people who get up every day and for some bizarre reason want to read the National. 500 people in a country of over 6 million. It's hardly an endorsement of what they're doing. And the circulation will continue to fall as it is now. But the every time I hear about the AIM movement, I just think of aimless, and they are aimless And there is, I'm probably going to spoil your list now of order of stories, but there is Aimless as Tommy Shepherd blaming people, if you don't vote for SNP, you'll not get independence. You know, well, what a nonsense that is, because everybody is. Phil's just gone through the extraordinary victories that the SNP has had since 2014, and we're still no closer to independence than we were back then. So the arrogance of some of these alleged yeses is unbelievable.
It sure is. Phil, you were heavily involved in Yes Aberdeen. That was your stomping ground during the 2014 election. Was it a referendum, was it not?
Yeah, it was. Actually, at the request of Christian Allard, I started Yes Aberdeen and Yes Aberdeenshire from scratch. And there was some absolutely phenomenal people involved. And there was a young man from Aberdeenshire who Kieran went on to. I ended up starting them both. This is ridiculous. So we split it up, and Kieran ran with Aberdeen, and he went on to, and I think he hopefully became a councillor, but he was spoiled by the SNP in Aberdeen, unfortunately. And now you get these clowns that call themselves AIM. Lloyd mentioned them. You know, they're a joke. They really are, and they have the audacity to complain about the situation that we now face, and they're actually mostly it's down to people like these shysters that the movement has fallen apart and divided, because these people have brought their extremist views as a priority over what used to be the base glue that kept us all together, an independent Scotland for the people. To benefit all and to allow us to get our will, not the will of these narcissistic idiots. They're completely self-obsessed and a complete waste of time. So no, it pisses me off that they're now blaming the wider Yes movement, which is the actual essential and only vehicle that we need. Tommy, as Yvonne mentioned, is talking through his arse. You don't need the SNP. The SNP in their current form we don't need. We need rid of the SNP in the current form. What we need is, if the SNP are going to play a part in that, they have to get with the programme, be it Scotland United, be it a new Yes movement. They just have to get back on board with the strategy that Alex designed, which was a Yes movement independent of the parties that pulls together on one purpose, a single platform that unites us all. And these clowns, and you're right, Roddy, the fact that they're part of the National shows us, we know who owns the National, we know they're in decline, and they really should be disappeared. They're irrelevant, now irrelevant. Anyway, fingers crossed these people will disappear, but sadly no. We're talking about them. Maybe we're doing them a favour by talking about them. Maybe we should just ignore them until they do go away.
Yeah, here. Eva, this year, 2014, there's going to be a UK general election, likely to be, well, we don't know for definite, but the hints are coming that it's going to be in the last quarter, October. George Osborne yesterday saying he believed it would be in November. But here's the thing, it's a general election year. The SNP know that, things aren't going great for them. So their big policy this year is conversion therapy. Tell me how that helps you win a UK general election, Eva. Sorry.
It probably guarantees the losses that we know the SNP are likely to be facing. Excuse me. This is going to be another Section 35 if it's passed. Mm-hmm. I sincerely hope that the SNP, the Scottish Government, can get better legal advice this time and actually accept the legal advice that they're getting as this bill makes its way through the Parliament, and that they ditch the entire thing. It is utterly shambolic. The aspect that relates to gender identity would be laughable were it not so very, very serious. It's a circuitous ideology with a circuitous definition, which is no better than mumbo jumbo, but will no doubt criminalise concerned parents. There's a couple of good blogs out, particularly one today from Dennis Kavanagh in respect of what gender identity is and what it might mean if your teenage child were considering that they were trans and you as a responsible parent suggested that perhaps they were not and that perhaps it's not possible to change sex. A particular example that was given was if you had a daughter who was in puberty and was using a breast binder and you take the breast binder away, that could be deemed to be behaviour that was coercive simply because you didn't want her to damage her body and damage her health. Or if you prevented your child getting puberty blockers, again for the same damaging reasons, those two actions could comprise harm, physical or psychological harm. And if the intent was to suppress the new transgender identity, you as a parent would be convicted of a crime which potentially carries a sentence of up to 7 years in prison. That is the looking glass through which the SNP Green coalition is trying to take Scotland. You think they would learn the lesson with the GRR? If anything, they've got worse. The vocabulary, the definitions, the meanings of words have been entirely corrupted. Gender identity being the obvious one, but there are other areas, including the other day, the spectacle of Phil's friend Fulton McGregor raising in committee a question about the treatment of non-binary people. This is coerced, forced speech. It has no place in a democracy. And the best thing that could happen with this conversion therapy bill is that it's ripped up, the pieces thrown away, and we can revisit all of this stuff again when Scotland's an independent country, and hopefully we have a government populated by thinking, intelligent adults, not led by the nose by children with no life experience worth mentioning.
Yeah. Conversion therapy sounds terrible there, Lloyd, but here, just showing my ignorance maybe, but if you don't tell the parents and you take a wee girl and you organise for her to have her breasts removed, is that not a conversion therapy? Well, should that not be the jailable offence, not the parent trying to stop it?
It's wholly absurd that we're even still discussing this, Roddy. Subsequent to the loss of the court case over Section 35 and the central principle that is behind all of this anti-scientific nonsense, for them to continue pursuing this in the manner in which they're doing seems to me to be completely tied in with the fact that Nicola Sturgeon sits on the back benches, and it's like they all have to give respect to Nicola by driving forward on these issues. But again, I get back to, where is this coming from? Where is the drive to create this level of confusion amongst our teenage children? I mean, I listened to Maggie Chapman the other day, and I mean, frankly, Maggie Chapman should not be a member of the Scottish Parliament. A great number of these people should not be members of the Parliament. And the political party members have to waken up to the fact that they have failed in their duty to produce decent candidates who understand the nature of public service. What is happening at the moment is we have a government and a parliament which is acting against the public good, against what the people of the country actually want. This is a wholly absurd situation where they've got themselves into this bubble where they can't say no, where they have to keep pursuing this ideology imported from the United States. But to what end? Genuinely, what do they believe they're achieving here, other than creating greater and greater division amongst people in the country over and over again? Why is it that we have got politicians who will not simply accept they are not experts on everything? And some of them are extremely dangerous in their zealotry. Maggie Chapman being one and Emma Roddick being another. These people have limited, as Eva said, limited life experience, but they are making law for this country on the basis of things they do not understand. It's time to dump the whole damn lot. It really is.
I agree. Yvonne, we have terrible poverty in Scotland. We have terrible homelessness. We have, you know, the spectre of free ports coming our way. And the SNP choose this latest hill to fight upon on conversion therapy in the year of a United Kingdom general election. Do you see any strategy behind that?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't put Maggie Chapman and Emma Roddick in charge of a cabbage patch. You know, we opened up this show with the heroic Dr. Lynn, who Eva was interviewing about the Tinker experiments. If Dr. Lynn was having bottom surgery and she asked to see Emma Roddick, she would be sprinting out to meet her now, because these people have become so obsessed with the GRR and with trans issues that they can't see or think beyond this situation. Emma Roddick is acting like Ed Davey did over the post office scandal, and she will suffer for it, because I am quite sure it's just going to be a matter of months now before the Tinker experiment becomes a big movie, because it's such an injustice, and Emma Roddick will be exposed for everything that she hasn't done. But this obsession that she's got with the trans issue and the GRR. As you know, I'm the women's convener for the Alapa Party. I really thought we'd put that to bed last year. And the fact that it came back again to haunt us in 2024, it's so annoying, because, you know, we're committed to independence, and I can't move on independence until I get this GRR crap out of the way, because it affects so many people. And parents are genuinely concerned, and they're looking for a party that can help them through this horrible maze. I mean, children in Scotland have enough mental health issues. You know, you were talking about poverty before, about free ports. We're being bombarded with all sorts of very real issues. And what does the SNP do? It's back at the back of the Narnia wardrobe, pulling out more bollocks about the GRR. I'm sick of it, really sick of it.
Here. Bollocks being the opposite word. Phil, moving on a bit, because already the clock's beginning to get ahead of us and we've got so much to get through. I want to go on to your pet subject, which of course Petrochem, etc. Grangemouth. Now there are five refineries down in England not in danger, and not a drop of petrol or oil in their water. In Scotland, we're about to lose it. So Kenny McCaskill, God bless his cotton socks, and Neil brought an early day motion on this, the threat to Grangemouth. And only Douglas Chapman from the SNP party bothered to turn up. Not even the MP, John Nicholson, whose constituency it is in, I believe it's John Nicholson, turned up. No, just only Douglas Chapman. These people are meant to be defending Scotland. What the hell was more important than this debate on Grangemouth?
It shows you just how far the SNP have fallen, that they're not willing to defend Scotland and our needs, the people's needs. An economy, Scotland's economy, it's essential that we retain a refinery. Every country should retain the ability to refine its own oil and gas. It's an absolute essential economic function in the modern world. The fact that we own 96.5% of the known reserves of oil in British UKCS waters. So there is a wee drop. There's about 3.5% in English and Welsh waters, and Northern Irish waters of the known reserves, but the vast majority and most of the future findings will also be out to the west of Scotland. So no, poor form, idiot policies on green nonsense when any economy, especially an energy-rich economy, needs a refinery. Now, the guys have articulated why conversion therapy in its current form will fail, but it's not alone. The idiot views on key issues such as energy are destroying political unity. Common sense prevails. People are seeing what idiots are saying. Yeah, you're right. Kenny McCaskill's 19th of January Commons Chamber speech on Grangemouth. He started it with Bathgate no more, Linwood no more, and went on to talk about the devastation will neither be forgotten nor forgiven. But is it now to be the new line of Grangemouth no more? Very well put, Kenny. Scotland's oil refinery, of the only one of any of size is threatened, and it will close. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and we really need to go and we need to address this. But we also mentioned Maggie Chapman, and I can't skip this. But I was going to go on to talk more about Kenny's speech, but reads Kenny's speech, he nails it about why we need it and how we compare. You know, the developing nations such as the Congo and Trinidad and Tobago. You know, that's where we really need to get our shit together. But she was introduced as the voice of reason and the economics of our energy strategy. It's crass idiocy. All these clowns are clueless. We need oil and gas until safe nuclear takes over, whether you like it or not, probably at least 50 years. Anything else, especially the mad green energy plan, the Greens, will cost you more and resolve nothing. As we know, the intermittent nature of wind and solar added to limitations on storage means it can never be relied upon to provide base load, never mind peak load. Models show a maximum of about 8% of energy should be wind and solar. You know, we should spend more on research and development on other useful energy sources, renewable. And let's be clear, phrases that are bandied about, this is something I wanted to talk about, but there's 4 phrases that are bandied about, and they're all supposed to mean the same. They don't. We need to destroy this ignorance. Renewable energy means self-replicating. Wind and solar farms are not self-replicating, so not renewable. The wind energy and solar energy is renewable, but the technology to turn that into electricity is not. Clean means not polluting, non-toxic, non-poisonous, but there's always a wee bit of contamination. So lithium in a battery, what do we do with old solar panels? Do people realise how much pollution and energy goes into making solar panels and what you do after the fact? So clean means clean enough on balance. Sustainable, what does that mean? Well, it actually means it lasts a long time at the present rate of use. Well, what's a long time? So is it 5 years or 500? For example, iron ore is plentiful. There's plenty in the Earth's crust. It's therefore sustainable, but not renewable. So then, for example, if you overfish, it's renewable resource, but not sustainable because you've overfished it. You know, we need to be clear about what this means. And the final one, and the one I really want to point out, and why we need to get rid of the greens. Green. All of these are definable. You can define scientifically renewable, clean and sustainable, but green is a tricky one. It's an undefinable term compared to the others. In fact, it's simply a marketing term. So when people talk about green energy, they actually don't know what they're talking about. They're just selling you an idea that doesn't really work. We need to apply sensible policies by people, and we've talked about this before, who know what they're talking about, know how to implement it, and ain't just more snake oil salesmen, because that's all we've got so far, other than Kenny and Albert at the moment in Parliament. And you should have to say Mr. Chapman, who's one of the good guys.
Yeah, we're a wee bit off reservation there, Mr. Boswell. The question asked
needs to begin. Let's pile into them. Come on.
Eva, on this, you know, if you're living in Grangemouth and your job's dependent, or you're an ancillary job from that, or the local news agent, or whatever, the guy that makes the sandwiches, and you're seeing there's a debate in Westminster, and you want to see what they're going to do to save your livelihood, and you see one SNP, you're not exactly going to be enthused to rush out and vote for the SNP at the general election, are you?
Well, I've actually got a personal stake in this, Roddy, because Alloa and Grangemouth will become the new constituency where I live. So the MP that currently represents Grangemouth is Martin Day, but John Nicholson will be contesting the new constituency, which will include Grangemouth within its boundary. And I simply don't understand anybody that would vote SNP in that constituency after seeing the utter lack of interest that the SNP seems to have in actually keeping Grangemouth open as a functioning refinery. Because on Monday, I think it was this week, Humza Yousaf made a speech about how when Scotland is an independent country, there will be a minister in charge of industrial policy. What Humza Yousaf did not do that day or any day before or since is provide a route map to that independent status. So again, it was jam tomorrow. But if by some miracle we were to become an independent country without that route map for independence, what industry will there be left for an industrial policy to be written about? What job will there be for a Minister for Industrial Policy to actually do? Because the current SNP are sitting on their hands, making pronouncements that they cannot follow through. A prime example was today when they launched their general election campaign. And their slogan is, vote SNP to make Scotland a Tory-free zone. What kind of aspiration is that? So Stephen Flynn was asked, Humza Yousaf was asked, what about the independence question? Oh yeah, that's right. Vote SNP to get independence. You'll not get independence from any other party. There is no strategy. There has been no strategy, no sensible, workable strategy for independence since Alex Salmond resigned as the leader of the SNP. That says all you have to know, that whether you're living in Grangemouth or Alloa or Aberdeen, Dumfries, Glasgow, wherever you are, you know what you're going to get if you vote SNP. You're going to get probably 15, 20 SNP MPs elected to sit in Westminster for another 5 years without doing anything to advance the cause one iota. And in the meantime, hundreds of jobs will be lost at Grangemouth, followed by thousands of jobs in various other supporting industries round about. And it is not only the death of that refinery, it is going to be the death of the hopes and the dreams of many people who know perfectly well that as one of the top 25 oil-producing countries of the world, we will be the only one in the top 25 who does not have their own refinery, because that's what happens with colonialism and when you elect politicians who are happy to leave control and power in the hands of Westminster and not take it back to Scotland.
What we have to hope for, Eva, is that someone like yourself living in that constituency, perhaps another party, may select them as a candidate to run and give the people a proper candidate, an exceptional independence candidate. Not that I'm dropping any hints, but you know what I'm talking about. Oink, oink. Lloyd, Grangemouth, that, you know, this should be the hill that the SNP want to fight and win on, not die on, not conversion therapy or GRRB. This is the one that we could get the people behind, but they've walked away from it.
It's incredible. It's absolutely extraordinary. You know, in the same week as we hear about this, we then get an announcement from the First Minister that they will have a department for industrial policy. Don't they already have an industrial policy? Who's making policy in the areas of industry? I mean, this highlights another kind of major issue here. We are a maritime nation. We are one half of a very big island. We're surrounded on three sides by water. We have literally thousands of islands. We have no maritime strategy. In the same way as we have no industrial strategy, maritime would be part of that. We have no industrial strategy. We have no maritime strategy. We have no plan whatsoever for the development of proper infrastructure between the mainland and our islands and our mainland and Europe and Scandinavia. The absurdity that this government, these people who claim they are a government, they're a management, they're not a government, that they do not understand that the loss of a refinery in an oil-producing country is entirely and completely unacceptable and must not be allowed to happen unless you wish to cripple the economy of this country and drive our people further and further into poverty. But I think what's going on here relates directly back to what Phil was saying earlier on. We have a bunch of people elected in Holyrood who hear green, see it as virtuous. They hear oil, they see it as non-virtuous. They have no proper understanding of economy, no understanding of economy, economic strategy, or indeed their responsibility to the people of this country and to the country's future. They have bought the greenwash. They have bought the idea that shutting an oil refinery in an oil-producing country is a good thing, that we will sacrifice ourselves and our future generations for the sake of virtue signalling to the world, when we're less than 1% of emissions will actually come from any of the oil that is processed through Grangemouth. It's an absurdity and shows the complete intellectual bankruptcy of this current SNP Green government.
I'm here. Yvonne, two of the leading lights that people hold up from the SNP, Kate Forbes and Joanna Cherry. Now this week, both of them, Joanna Cherry was putting her bit in, and she's bringing in a bill, and she was shouting about it, about changing the role of the Lord Advocate. In other words, repairing devolution, not doing any independence, helping to make devolution better. I want to quote Kate Forbes. I think, here we are, propose a devolution of power to amend the role of the law officers. We've then got Kate Forbes. She wants all MPs, unionists, and the alleged independence MSPs to unite to save devolution. I don't think these two women in the SNP quite get it, do they? We're not for devolution. We're for independence.
Every time I see the D word being mentioned, you know, I'm looking out for a trend or something happening. And, you know, Joanna Cherry is our darling. She was the darling of the independence movement. And what she's doing, playing with the D word, I'm really not sure. I did notice yesterday that she's now been made chair of the Human Rights Committee in the House of Commons, which is great. Congratulations on that. But it's not going to get us independence, Joanna. You know, why were you elected in the first place? Come on, you're absolutely brilliant. You've got a fantastic legal brain, a great mind. If anybody can find a route out of Westminster, it's you. For God's sake, Joanna, do not get diverted with the D word. Just get us independence. And I'm sure her heart is there. I just don't know why she's allowing herself to be sidetracked in this way. And then we have that bloody civil servant, I forget her name, who keeps popping up, and she's full of devolution as well. And it's sorry?
I'm coming on to her.
All right. I've peaked too soon, have I? I'll sit back. I'll sit this one out then. But really, I'm really afraid that Joanna is starting to settle down and not settle up.
Well,
please.
I was going to quote one of your favourite politicians, Mary Black, when she's telling you exactly what we've been saying in this show for long enough, that there's too many of them settling up there. I mean, I find the height of absolute bloody hypocrisy for her to be saying it. But there's too many of them settling down there. Phil, you've seen it firsthand, them settling down, but do you not get angry when you see people that, you know, Kate Forbes and Joanna Cherry trying to improve devolution? Stephen Flynn was another one, the leader in the House of Commons, saying we've got to strengthen devolution. No, we've not. We've got to get rid of it and bring in independence, nothing less.
Yeah, Kate Forbes wants MSPs to unite to save devolution, and Joanna Cherry in Westminster seems to put in all her efforts into sorting devolution with her proposal. Yeah, your question, have they forgotten why they've been elected? Yes. yes, and they're not the answer. It's the reason why neither of these women, sadly, are the answer. And we should not forget that the ego trip, and don't be wrong, it was a very clever win that well, sort of a win. It was a Pyrrhic victory. She won some of the argument, but failed to prevent Scotland from being taken out of Europe against its will, and failed to reverse the decision of the English people. Who the hell do we think we are when the SNP decided to try to reverse Brexit instead of focusing on, I mean, it was the classic scenario. As Napoleon said, don't disrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, and instead we go in and start to fight their battles from them. They're losing battles. It's idiocy, and the egotism of being front and centre on the telly, I'm afraid, is something. I mean, I know Joanna reasonably well. She keeps her cards close to her chest. She's a very clever woman, very capable, but she's human. And in my opinion, she's playing to the field and the market, and isn't unhappy when she's front and centre and on the telly. And I'm afraid that's got to her, I believe, here, because why are you fighting this unnecessary war? We should be choosing our battles. So no, it pisses me off something rotten. And then it was mentioned earlier, we haven't really touched on it, but I think the Tommy Sheppard vote, vote SNP or Indies off the table. When's it been on the table in the last 9 or 10 years? Tommy's talking rubbish. As voting SNP means independence remains off the table. That's what it means. The people of Scotland need to and will give this corrupted SNP a bloody nose. And sadly, it's now the only option to take steps backward by dethroning the SNP run by shysters, so we can clean out the SNP leadership and Scottish Government, regain control of the party, of one of the parties that support independence, and build a Scotland United or unified yes movement. The good thing is that many of us know who they are. We know who sold us out. And those have been brought in by the establishment to help deconstruct the unity within the Yes movement that the British establishment so fears. And we must not be afraid to wield the knife and remove these impostors from office and government positions and replace them with those who have independence as the key driver. If you don't have independence and nothing less at your core, get out of the SNP and start your own wee Diddy party. We're coming for you. And I mean politically. They need to be removed for the people of our country to progress.
Well, I think you won't have long to wait, because I wrote a wee chance to punt my blog here on Friday. I can't believe it's 10 years, which sets up what I believe will be a scenario that's going to happen. There's going to be a slaughtering of independence parties in this general election, and I think it'll help maybe purge the place out. So get a read at that, folks. Cost you nothing. Eva.
Sorry, one more thing though, Rod, I just meant to say, I mean, the final point on that with Kate is the fact that Kate and Joanna are saying this is the reason why I don't believe Kate's the answer. She's perhaps a slightly less useless option than Humza at best. And as Eva stated, SNP are not getting us independence. Sorry, no. Matt.
Well, my sources tell me that Jenny Gilruth's the next one they want up.
Oh, dear God.
Exactly. Eva, do you get despondent when you hear, people like Joanna Cherry and Kate Forbes turning around talking about strengthening devolution?
I find it incredibly frustrating, because these women are very capable, intelligent, well qualified. And every minute that they spend on something that's not independence at the moment is a wasted minute. And we've got, for years now, we've had the proposals about supermajorities and collapsing Holyrood and, de facto referenda, Scotland United, a whole host of opportunities that are actually available right this minute. And there's no reason why these different positions aren't put forward and supported. Now, what could easily happen to cure all of Scotland's ills is to collapse Holyrood. Joanna Cherry, as a lawyer, knows that. She knows what the process is. Kate Forbes knows too. There's no good reason why they don't do it if independence is the real show in town. It's abundantly clear that Humza doesn't want to go down that road, but that's because he hasn't a clue if he's coming or going. And as we said earlier, the latest position today about making Scotland a Tory-free zone, that's a classic. Put party before country. And that's what's got to stop. You know, one of the reasons why I was in the SNP for the decades that I was, and why my parents were there before me, and why I was so hurt at the deterioration in the party, was because the SNP was supposed to be different from all other political parties. They were based on a principle, and the principle was self-determination. It was about the democratic will of a nation, you know, one of the most ancient nations on the planet, with, for example, the oldest flag and history and geography, that some of which was, you know, not just frightening and blood-curdling, but there were aspects of our history that were really very important and valued and respected worldwide. But as a country today, I doubt very much that Scotland has got very much respect internationally, because we're still being dragged to hell and back by being thurled to Westminster. So it isn't just depressing, it's frustrating. We need, for the sake of the future of the people of this country, we need to break away from the rest of the United Kingdom. And we need brains and people with ability and power like Joanna and Kate to help to create the path towards that independent destiny. Tinkering about how devolution works will become offensive to people like me, who see day and daily the impact that Westminster policies are having. And a line has got to be drawn, and this should be the year that all independence-minded people of all party and no party get together and hammer out exactly how we're going to reach that destination. There's no point in slagging each other off without having solutions, and there are multiple solutions. De facto referenda, Scotland United, independent candidates for independence is something I'm hearing whispered a lot now. And people are starting to use new phrases. There's something in the air, and I suggest strongly that politicians who want independence start listening to the people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been getting a lot of vibes as well from people. People are getting a wee bit frustrated. How about you, Lloyd? When you see SNP MPs and MSPs wanting to tinker with devolution and not be promoting independence, you started off as one of the first MSPs in the Parliament. But does it not get you frustrated that they're trying to save devolution and not find independence?
Our whole purpose in 1999 was to destroy devolution and create independence. It's quite straightforward. You know, that's what any pro-independence party does in any country, anywhere in the world. For me, Holyrood was a platform where we could extol the virtues of independence, explain the arguments, articulate these things on a day and daily, minute to minute, hour to hour basis since 1999. Now, that's not exactly what we did, but we've come a long way, only to be stopped, only to have hit this ditch, this moat created by Miss Sturgeon and the children currently occupying the government benches in Holyrood. But we need a strategy for the general election. And I mean, in my own constituency, I'm a member in Edinburgh East and Musselburgh as it is now, as it was when Kenny McCaskill won the seat the first time round when he was a member of the Scottish National Party. Now, to me, there only be one thing that needs to happen at the general election, and that is that those of an independence mind must stand where there's a possibility of actually winning. And I would suggest that, given the statement by the current SNP MP for Edinburgh East, that if you don't vote for him, then independence is off the table. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Shepherd, but the previous incumbent in your seat, a certain Mr. Kenneth McCaskill, I believe should stand in this seat and directly challenge Tommy on that issue. I know that Kenny's an Alba member for East Lothian, so maybe he'll be standing in East Lothian. And if that's the case, then Ash Regan, as the only Alba member of the Scottish Parliament at present, should stand directly against Tommy Shepherd in her constituency. She's going to have to run in 2026 in the Scottish Parliament boundary constituency. She should run in the general election and test his argument. Test the argument. If they won't vote for him and they vote for her, then that's a vote for independence, a genuine vote for independence. And I'm not a member of the Alpa Party, but the Alpa Party needs to start thinking seriously about its strategy at this general election. And when it gets an opportunity, as Mr. Shepherd has given them, to directly challenge the nonsensical argument that he has that if you don't vote for the SNP, then independence is off the table. Well, coming from an Ulster Unionist, that's pretty damn rich, Tommy.
Oh, indeed, indeed. And that's the one thing we've spoken about in this show quite a lot, Yvonne, that while the SNP is slipping in the polls, independence is staying over 50% and has done for over a year now. It just needs a route. It just needs a conduit to get us there. But to come back to something you mentioned earlier, Yvonne, and that is Liz Lloyd, very close friend of the gentleman who released the article on Alex Salmond that should never have been released. They had a nice holiday, I believe, together in America with a few other people. I've forgotten his name. Isn't that terrible? Instantly forgettable. But she worked in Nicola Sturgeon's office when that same report fell away and ended up in the lap of her friend who worked for the Daily Record. She's been getting a lot of platforms recently talking about independence. Do we think she's been promised a seat somewhere?
Well, you have to wonder because, why is a British civil servant who, let's face it, she was chosen by Downing Street to come up to Scotland. Why is she being given such a platform?
Indeed.
And, you say yourself, there's no such thing as coincidence. Civil servants operate below the waterline. That's what they do. You don't see them, you don't hear them until they get a knighthood or something else, and they operate, as I say, below the watermark. She has been sticking her head up. She'd turn up to the opening of an envelope at the moment. She's so desperate to get herself in the frame. So you have to wonder, what the hell is she doing? That, Liz, stay in your own lane. Stay where you are. Do not get involved. I would hate to see her as an elected politician, a democratically elected politician. I would hate to see that because she's up to no good. And, she has made in England stamped on her bottom. She is created by Westminster and she's their person, and bringing her up was bad enough, but to bring her up as an elected politician is even worse. And I'm sorry, I wouldn't trust her as far as I could throw her.
Quite right. As you say, her and her very close friend David Clegg, his name came back to me. He was definitely working below the waterline. I wonder how else he managed to get that document about Alex Salmond, which our PC plods don't seem to be able to work out either. Maybe you should start talking to the best friend of David Clegg, the holiday partner of David Clegg. Anyway, look, guys, the clock's beating us now. I really wanted to cover two major topics of the week, but I think I'll leave this for the midweek. We're going to have a midweek special because the two huge global stories going on just now is what's going on in The Hague in the International Court of Justice. And 2 or 3 minutes of us talking here just now doesn't do it justice, dare I say, no pun intended. And the attacks by the British and the Americans on Yemen, the only country that's doing something to try and avoid the genocide that's going on in Gaza. So I wanted to cover those stories in this edition, but we just don't have the time. But we will be covering it in our midweek show because that story is not going away. It is not going away, and we won't stop covering it when we can. But the main thing is this show, the Sunday show, is about Scotland and what's going on in Scotland. I hope you've enjoyed us coming back. I hope you all had a great holiday, and I hope you're glad like us to be back working, because this year more than any, because we do have a general election, which is not looking good, but we'll work at it and let's see what we can do. And until we see you again, please, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.